to help them turn information into some actionable knowledge. We're pleased to have you both, and I will turn the presentation over to the both of you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, George.
George, do you mind if you can allow us to share our presentation?
Hi, Bamini does have permissions to share. Would you rather have them, Ahmed?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give it to Ahmed instead. My apologies.
Thank you.
You should be able to share them.
Okay.
Thanks so much. So let me just start with a big thank you to the organizers for the invitation to speak. I'll be talking with Ahmed about mapping research publications to the UN SDGs. And I'll be discussing our approach and what it can teach us. So I'll be covering two parts in this talk. Ahmed, if you could go to the next slide.
Yeah, it's a freeze. Okay, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I'll be presenting on mapping research to the SDGs, and Ahmed will be presenting the component on how, once you've mapped research to the SDGs, you can use that data to evaluate your SDG research. Next slide, please. So first, I'll be covering mapping research to the SDGs, and specifically the challenges involved in this approach. So first, a quick summary of the SDGs, which I'm sure everyone here is familiar with. I just want to point out that they were adopted in 2015 to replace the Millennium Development Goals. So it wasn't the first iteration of goals. And specifically, it was an attempt to recognize that ending poverty and other deprivations must go hand in hand with strategies that improve health and education. So rather than the 8 Millennium Development Goals, it was expanded into 17 SDGs, which are interconnected and unique. So reaching each goal also impacts other goals in a positive way. Next slide, please. So when it comes to identifying the research specifically that supports the SDGs, there's a huge challenge there, because if you take an SDG like life below water, that SDG is realized when certain targets and indicators are achieved. And those are all very specific. So we have things like conserve coastal and marine areas and sustainable fishing. And each of those are realized as a result of specific changes in practices or new tools or policies. So research is upstream of those applications even. And so our task was to identify or develop publication sets that reflect the research that would support this pipeline. Next slide, please. So we endeavored on this first in 2015 by taking the 17 SDGs and mapping them to 6 key themes: dignity, people, prosperity, planet, justice, and partnership. And we summarized those results in the report that you see here, Sustainability Science in a Global Landscape. And it was a collaboration with SciDev.net. So they were the subject matter experts that informed how we developed those queries. However, next slide, please. We received a directive from our new CEO a few years later that Elsevier was going to work to support the SDGs in a more concrete way. And part of that was to take those 6 themes and create specific queries for each of the 17 SDGs. And so we've presented that data or a teaser to that in this report shown here, The Power of Data to Advance the SDGs. And that was the result of 2 weeks of really intensive work with full-time employees working on queries, reading the SDGs and the targets and indicators, and trying to create queries that would reflect each of the SDGs. So next slide, please. And we had quite a couple of learnings that I'd like to use this time to share with you on that experience. And those came out in 2020, and they're also in SciVal. So let me share some of the lessons that we learned from trying to develop queries on the 17 SDGs. So our first lesson was that it's better to start and plan to iterate than to try and get it right the first time. Of course, 17 SDGs, 17 queries is a huge task, but it's also very sort of fluid definitions of topics that the SDGs represent. So it was a challenge, but we did get positive feedback from the community. And here's a quote from Naby from the University of Southern Denmark. And she said that they welcomed our efforts, and then further down, they urge us to further work to develop more accurate next generation tools and queries to map research to the SDGs. And so we had already, when we had made our queries, we already knew that we were going to iterate on that. Next slide. Another really positive learning for us was that just to provide the means to be critiqued. So we made all the queries available on Mendeley data, and that included the full Scopus query for each SDG. You could copy and paste it into Scopus and get the same results that we were getting. And the methodology, like how we decided to include or exclude certain terms in our query, and they could be downloaded from Mendeley. And as a result of this, we also got a lot of feedback. There's a paper written about critiquing the queries, which was nice to see how people were interacting with this, with our attempt to increase transparency around the queries. Next slide, please. And so the last lesson, which we kind of anticipated, but was interesting to see, was that the SDG queries generate highly variable results. So these are 3 Venn diagrams, each for a different SDG, showing the overlap in papers from 4 different queries. And you can see that no more than 20% of publications were in common for the different queries. So depending on who's developing this query, you are going to get very different results. And that's not entirely surprising because there's so much subjectivity in interpreting what the SDGs are about. It's also a feature of the SDGs is they're meant to reflect what they mean to you or your country or your organization. So with those lessons at hand, we came up with a plan for our next iteration. Next slide, please. So we have had a 3-pronged solution. One was to count as many opinions as possible. So try and crowdsource the creation of a database of research mapped to the SDGs. The second was to invest more time in the creation of more detailed queries. And the third is to partner with others in the field to improve our publication sets. And I'll go over each of these in a little more detail. So the first was the crowdsourcing. What we did was we erected this website where anyone can go in and choose a publication and match it to an SDG. So if you go to the next slide, what it looks like, you pick an SDG and it gives you a random selection of publications based on our query. And then you can click on the match to indicators in orange and it'll take you to a place where you can select the targets and indicators that paper you feel, maps to, or you can tell us if it doesn't map to that SDG. And so the goal here was to create a data set to evaluate the queries against that was reflective of a broad variety of individuals. Next slide, please. Yeah. We also went back to our queries and put a bigger team, a team of 16 actually, on redefining the queries. And so this time we subdivided the SDGs into research areas based on the targets and indicators. And just to give you a sense of the level of granularity, for each SDG, we devised about 1,000 queries. So, so these are really specific. There is a lot of consultation in the query, among the query team, to make sure that, to kind of build consensus. And if you click forward, and then also desk research to make sure that we were interpreting the queries correctly. Next slide. And as part of this, we developed a tool, a query helper tool, which would allow us to see how many papers were retrieving with a query, and then what the impact of modifying the query with a new term or removing a term might be. And so the result of this, or the aim of this, if you click forward, please, was to, at the end, we were able to achieve an 80% recall level and an 80% precision level. And the assessment of recall and precision was based on the understanding developed through brainstorming sessions and document review, and really like manual review of that team of 16, going through all the papers and just tagging them as yes, no, and whether or not they really fit in with the SDG. Next slide, please. And then we did further expansion with machine learning. And so the last part, the last prong of our improvement is to work with partners to improve the SDG mapping and build consensus with them. And this was the result of them coming to us and us discussing our independent initiatives and deciding to work together. And so we've been working with the Aurora Universities Alliance, Auckland University, and Southern Denmark University to build a consensus on what the SDGs, what an inclusive publication sets of the SDGs would look like. And with that, I'll pass on to Ahmed. Thank you. Oh, yeah. And so this was just to give, like an overview also, and to say, like, we started this journey in 2015, and we're not expecting to be complete because it is an iterative process, and we expect to continue and to improve on it.
Okay, thanks, Bamini. So now my part, which will be more focused on how we incorporate those queries in our tools. So one of the tools that I will gonna be sharing today is SciVal. So I will share how you can understand, analyze your contribution to the United Nations SDGs using SciVal. So I prepared 3 use cases, but before going to the use case, I want to let everyone knows that we have a free layer that give you some insights about SDGs. So if you go to scival.com/SDG, you will gonna land on this page where you will see all the SDGs that we have search queries for it. And for everyone, you will be able to view the key phrase analysis, okay, within every SDG. So this is for SDG 1, no poverty. So those are the top 50 key phrases by relevance. So the ones, you know, that's in size, like the one in green means it's growing. The one in relevance, you will see, you know, in the on the size. So you will see like poverty, the relevance is 1, and so on. Also, you will be able to see the top topic clusters, that this is part of this SDG. So the top 5 topic clusters, most active institutions in SDG 1, most active countries. So this gives you like a quick snapshot of the SDGs, but definitely if you want to go into more details, you will need to have access to SciVal to run the analysis. And this is what I'm planning to share with you today. Okay, so the first use case that I'm planning to share today is about identifying key institutions and experts to facilitate team building for targeted funding bids in fields related to the United Nations SDGs. So when you go to SciVal and when you log in here, you will see on the left-hand side entity panel. So what we did under the research areas, we created all the SDGs, and like what Bamini mentioned, we have in 2020 SDGs, and we just launched the 2021 SDGs using the updated queries. So simply you just search for SDG, and then you will see the complete list of the SDGs. We are covering from 1 till 16, okay, SDGs. So if we take an example for today to answer the first use case, let's say SDG 13, which is about climate action. Okay, so here we are using two modules in SciVal to answer this use case. So basically, when just using the SDG query that we created, you will go to institutions, and then you will see the top 10 institutions who are active in this SDG. But if you want to go into more details to analyze the top 100 and even to locate the top institutions per country, you can move to the trends module. And this is what I'm showing right now.
Ahmed, your other screen is not showing yet.
Really?
We're just seeing the PowerPoint right now.
Okay.
If you've just chosen to share the PowerPoint application, it won't show anything else. It will show up as a gray box. So I recommend sharing your screen instead.
Yeah, I'm trying to get actually to the options. It's not showing in front of me, which is quite strange. Do this here. Oh yeah, okay. So I will stop sharing and I will share again. Can you confirm that you can see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
We can see SciVal.
Okay. Sorry for that. So again, once you, okay, let me start with the first term, which is the free layer. So when you go to scival.com/SDG, you will see all the SDGs here, okay, on this landing page, and you will be able to check into with every SDG the top key phrases, okay, with the relevance, if there is growth or declining in using those key phrases. If you want to check into the top topic clusters that's contributing to this SDG, you can have it here, the top most active institutions and the most active countries. So this is give you a quick snapshot of what you can do, what you can get, from the SDGs. Now, if you want to go in deep analysis, you will need to have a subscription to SciVal to understand more about that. So the first use case about identifying key institutions and experts in certain SDGs. So when you go to SciVal.com, okay, and then when you click on the entity panel where we created all the research, all the SDGs. So here, if you search for an SDG, so whether it's SDG 1, 2, we have from 1 till 16 already created in the system. So we'll see the 2021, which is the one which just launched last week, and even the old one for 2020, it's up here. So if I take an example, SDG 13, which is about climate action, you will be able to check into the top institutions and top researchers contributing in SDG 13. So here it's loading the top 100 institutions. Okay, so we'll see here the top 100 institutions contributing into SDG 13, and they are ranked based on the scholarly output. If you want to limit, for instance, if we want to check into North America, Canadian institution, so here we can check that. Here we can limit, and then you will see all the institutions that they are contributing to SDG 13. So this is one of the ways that you can use so that you can check into who are the key contributors. At the same time, if you are looking for a corporate, for instance, who are active in SDG 13, so you have that under different sectors, so you can limit to corporate. So you will gonna see the corporate institutions who are active in SDGs 13, like WSP Global, Hydro-Quebec, Hatch Limited, FP Innovations, and so on. So, and also using SciVal, it can help you to locate the researchers inside those corporates so that you can reach out and build that connection. So, or expand the collaboration. Also for the authors tab, here you will check all the authors, you know, here we are limiting to North America, to Canada. So it's loading. Yeah, so we'll see here the top researchers, you know, they are active in SDG 13. And you can check their profile, their research activity for sure. Now I'm going to the second use case, which is about identifying topics contributing to the United Nations SDGs for further analysis. So now you are looking at an SDG and you want to identify what are the topics that's contributing, research topics contributing to this SDG. So basically here you can go inside SciVal, where what you can do in the overview module, you can pick from the again the research for under the research area entity, and then you can just here type the SDG that you want to add. So for instance, let's take another one, SDG, for instance, 2, which is about zero hunger. So now I will gonna check into that. So now we are trying in this use case to identify what are the topics that's, you know, contributing to this SDG 2. And you will see here the topics tab. So if you click on the topics tab, then you will see the list of topics and topic clusters. And as mentioned by Lisa in her presentation, you have two different levels of aggregation inside SciVal. So highly granular level, which is the topics, and a higher aggregated level, which is the topic clusters. It's loading because it's we are talking about almost 20,000 topic. Yeah, so we'll see them here, all the topics that contributing to SDG 2. And for this use case in your institution, if you want to analyze into more detail to check into who is you know, the major contributor, for instance, to this research topic, you just click on Analyze Worldwide, and then you will be able to analyze this research topic specifically. So this research topic about food pantries, about program participation and hunger, it includes 2,500 publications, more than 350 institutions are collaborating internationally, and you will see the top key phrases in this granular research topic, who are the top institutions contributing in this research topic and active countries. But if you want to go in more details about the institutions, you can click on the institutions. And I can do like reset filter. So yeah, so now we are looking worldwide, but as I did with the first use case, you can limit. So the first one is Harvard. You see University of Toronto is number 3 in this research topic. And you have other metrics that you can use up here so that you can rank those institutions, and you can pick, you have the option. So for instance, if you want to rank them based on international collaboration, you have the option, you know, here to rank them based on the international collaboration. So this is a kind of ways that you can use SciVal in a way to analyze topics within, within an SDG. Now I will move to the third one, the third use case, which is now I will go more specifically to identify topics that your institution are contributing to the United Nations. So in the use case number 2, I focus on an SDG as a whole and identifying topics within this SDG. Now in use case 3, I want to identify the topics that your institutions are active in certain SDG. And I will tell you the example about that. So if we go, for instance, here to SDG 3, which is about health and well-being. So let's add new SDG 3. Okay. So here in SDG 3, we will see the list of institutions globally that are contributing, in this research topic. Now in this SDG. So now if I limit to North America and I limit to Canada, so we'll see the list of institutions from Canada that are contributing to SDG 3. And here, if you want to analyze the contribution of every institution, simply like, let me take an example, for instance, University of Victoria in BC, you can click here on these publications, the 941 that University of Victoria is publishing, those 941. And then I will save it as a publication set. So now I'm trying to analyze specifically the contribution from UVic in British Columbia. So I will save as a publication set, create a publication set. So it's created. Now, I will gonna analyze the 941 publications. So as you can see here, when I go to the topics tab, you will see that UVic is active in 576 topic, and those are the granular research topic that they are active in. Okay, about homelessness, okay, assisted living facilities, and so on. It's very granular, but definitely if you want to go on an aggregated level, you don't want to go that granular, you can go to the topic clusters aggregated level. And this is what you will see up here, which is the 200, sorry. Yeah. You will see them here. Okay. And you have another view where now you are viewing it in a table view, but also you can view it in a wheel where every bubble represents a topic cluster. Okay. And you can analyze every one, as you can see up here. So every bubble represents a topic cluster, and when it's more towards the periphery, it means that it's more of a single discipline. If it's more to the center, it means that it's multidisciplinary. So this is how you can analyze and check into your contribution, your institution contribution in SDG, and specifically going per topic, very granular, and then analyzing your contribution even within every single topic. One last bit that might be also interesting, and I think we have a couple of minutes also to share. So if you go, for instance, for SDG, any SDG, so if we go to SDG 3, and you want to identify the emerging research topics inside, this SDG 3. So you have here a filter that can help you to identify the newly emerged topics for 2021. So this is what, is emerging in terms of topics in the last, let me see the table view. Yeah, so those are the ones. that's emerged in 2021. It means that in those research topics, there is a momentum, there is something happening, maybe piling up in terms of citations, maybe many, publications are published, in those research topics. So that's why it's emerging topics. That's all that I wanted to share with you today. And again, thanks for the invitation. And please, if you have any questions, still we have time that we can answer it.
Okay, thank you very much. Just I'll wait a few seconds here while we see if we have some questions that come in. I guess maybe while we're waiting, I guess maybe if you can speak to some of your collaborative efforts and your crowdsourcing, because it does seem like this is a really difficult thing to normalize these queries in the way that they're generally applicable. And maybe if you can speak to some of the results of your working more collaboratively on this to identify strategies.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So the crowdsourcing efforts, I mean, it's a challenge because we're asking people to contribute their time and, there's going to be biases in that, but we have collected data from 56 countries, and that's more than what was represented before. The data set so far is still under 1,000 publications, so it's not enough to, really inform precision and recall estimates. But we are continuing to try and advertise and drum up support or contributions to that. And in the long run, those results will go into Mendeley data and also the ICSR labs for researchers to manipulate and test research questions with. So that's the crowdsourcing. And then for the collaborations, what we're doing is currently where everyone is working independently, and over the next year, so we have two teams that are working, taking a machine learning approach, one team that is doing entirely queries, and our team is doing queries and with a little bit of machine learning. And so now we're in the phase of comparing all of our results and then deciding what needs to be done, why there are differences, and one of the results that we're anticipating coming out with from that is a peer-reviewed paper that kind of captures all of those efforts.
Okay. Let me see. I don't. Actually, I have a couple questions here. For your use case number 1, can you speak to how you interpret the data in order to apply it to the funding support specifically?
Okay, so basically what you can do is in the first use case, you can limit to the researchers within your institutions that you can form research groups so that you can apply to a funding application, or identifying a collaborator, an external institution that's active in certain area, okay, that you can approach and work together on a certain funding.
Okay. Thank you for that. Next question. This speaks to, again, more community standardization. So is this something that we as a community can standardize on? The participant says, my senior admin wants to pick and choose any query that shows that we are number 1, which is silly. I hope we can use this approach as a more objective and replicable answer or strategy.
It seems like more of a comment, but I do empathize with that, and it's part of the reason, to not have a crowdsourcing approach, because people can also submit their own papers and tag them. But the approach I use there is to challenge users to tell me, which target and indicator specifically they feel is supported, because sometimes the high-level SDG name is poverty. Your paper might seem like it links to poverty, but it doesn't actually support one of the targets and indicators as they're listed. So using that as a tool to drive further consideration and kind of push away from bias. Personal bias has been really helpful.
Okay. I think we have time for one more question. You mentioned that the search strategy development process is iterative. How frequently are the search strings edited or changed? And just wondering if this is on an as needed basis or with a predetermined frequency or schedule.
Yeah, so there is a bit of a predetermined schedule because we do work with the Times Higher Education group who uses our queries and data as part of their impact rankings. And that comes out every April, or late April, early May. And so that is our hard stop to make any changes or decide to go with the previous version. And so the first, the 2020 version that you'll see in SciVal, that's reflected in the 2020 THE rankings, and then this new version in 2021 will correspond to the 2021 rankings.
Okay. I think that's it for our questions, and very nicely timed to our schedule. We very much again appreciate your contribution. This is a challenging area to get work done, and we can see there's been a lot of effort that's been put into this over the years. So and those of us we're appreciative of the various vendors addressing and supporting this type of query development and so on. Okay, I think we're going to switch moderators at this point. I think I'll be handing over the